Hi everyone, I'm Cutting On and welcome back to Teen Meets. So today I'm very fortunate to be joined by Dean Rees-Evans. He's the author of The 3 Principles, Wellbeing for Life, and is a human relations consultant, trainer, and international public speaker. It's very good to have you here.
Thank you, Catherine.
So today we're going to be talking about why people get displaced in life and also the 3 principles that you talk about in your book. I believe that earlier we had a bit of a discussion about this, so it'd be good to get your thoughts on this.
Okay, sure.
Definitely. So do you think you could give an overview of what, the 3 principles are and its relation to that displacement that you're talking about?
I can certainly give it a try. Well, in terms of the principles, to keep it really simple, it's just mind, which, as we discussed earlier, is different from or differentiated from the brain. So the brain is where we store all our information, all of our learning, all of our education, all the things that we gain knowledge through life. But the mind is spiritual. So when we talk about the mind, we're talking about the formless spiritual energy of the universe. So it's in everything. If you took an acorn and planted it in the ground, as long as it has the right conditions, moisture and sunlight and nutrition, then it's going to grow into an oak tree. Yeah? So that energy is in everything, in all of us. So that's what we mean when we're talking about mind. That's what we're talking about, is the intelligence behind life itself, which as we discussed earlier, that's what we're born with. We're born with that intelligence. It's coursing through us our whole lives. It's what we carry to the last moment of life, and beyond that, obviously, we don't know what happens.
Definitely.
Yeah. And consciousness really is just awareness. It's just about having an awareness of the universe. And the principle of thought, when thought arises in consciousness, consciousness makes that thought appear real. So remember how we discussed earlier, we are creating the reality of our own existence. So as the Buddha said once, it is your mind that creates this world. So we're looking at how we create reality as individuals, and that's what the 3 principles is pointing towards, is helping us as individuals understand how on a moment-to-moment basis we're continuously creating the reality that we experience as individuals.
So it's all to do with sense perception and how you see the world around you.
Yeah, how you see the world yourself through your own perception.
Yeah.
In the living moment. Yeah, because that, as we spoke earlier, that can change from moment to moment.
Make all the difference.
Yeah.
And the third one?
Thought. So the 3rd principle is thought. So as I said, when thought arises in consciousness, which it's doing constantly, we're never, science says we think something like 60 to 100,000 thoughts a day, which is a lot of thinking.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's why we can, a lot of people can get very overloaded with their own thinking and want to find a bit of peace from that. But the secret to that is to understand that each thought that arises, most of the time our mind is like a gardener. It's constantly pruning. So it's constantly pruning. We don't have to do that. The mind is naturally pruning out because we're having that 60 to 100,000 thoughts every day. If we were to try and sift through them ourselves, it would be exhausting. Yeah?
Yeah. I know that we had a discussion about this, but when you're talking about the things that you're born with, like that natural intelligence, could you expand a bit on that?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. So when we're born with wisdom, okay? We're all born genius. Whether we feel like we're genius or not is irrespective. As I said to you, when I was a high school teacher, I always used to say to the kids, hey, did you all know that you were all born genius? And they'd say, no, sir, you've got the wrong class here. Not us. And I'd say, no, I'm not talking about book learning. I'm talking about the wisdom that we're born with, the wisdom that lies within inside us. So everybody has that natural intelligence, that innate health, that innate psychological health, and that's our guide.
Yeah.
That helps us go from birth right through life. And if the mind is quiet enough, that's what we're guided by. If we're quiet enough, we can hear that sort of inner still voice guiding us in the right direction. It's the thing that for most of us helps us not do the wrong thing in life, not make so many mistakes.
And you wrote that we are everything we have ever looked for in this world. We have all the solutions to any problem. Does that contribute with that inner voice, kind of like that intuition in finding those solutions? Because I think earlier we mentioned that oftentimes when we encounter problems because of, you know, panic or feeling sort of over emotional, we kind of don't see the solutions that are quite simple, that are often, you know, staring us right in the face. So
yeah, I think one of the things you said earlier is really important to re-mention, which is that when we're in difficult circumstances, I think our intuition jumps to the surface very quickly to save us and pull us out of difficult situations. Yeah, but I think in terms of individuals, I think that when, you know, if we go back to thought again, if we're overloaded in our thinking, then it's much harder to see the bigger picture. Yeah. So that's when it's harder. So wisdom, common sense, intuition, aha moments, they're all happening all of the time. But it's, if our mind is over busy, whether it be through our education system, you know, we're overloaded because we're preparing for an exam, or we're just, you know, having a hard time because we want to do things our parents don't want us to do, things like that. It's the same thing. If we can get our mind quiet, and let's make a really important point here, the mind only has to be quiet for a millisecond for wisdom to come to the surface and help us out, make a good decision and break us free from the bonds of all that thinking that we have been doing.
So obviously I know that many people, I mean especially teenagers like myself, going through the challenges and all the tribulations of high school, it can be difficult to sometimes think rationally and be calm. So what would you suggest is a way to enter that sort of, you know, neutrality that you were mentioning, and, you know, be able to think rationally and clearly in, you know, a distinct sort of way? So
you mean when you're right in the middle of the pie, when you're in the middle of being busy, being, you know, in...
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, during those kind of times. Well, I think that one of the things that we spoke about earlier, which is also worth re-exploring, is remembering that the body has its own wisdom too. So if you're studying for exams and you study for too long, everyone knows this, but as you were saying earlier, oftentimes people will actually drive past the point of exhaustion because they feel they should. Why do they feel they should? Because society tells them exams are really important, you've got to do them, you've got to score well. But we have to listen to the body, and the body is telling us, the wisdom of the body will tell us, really, you need to rest now. So to enter that space of what I call beautiful neutrality, you have to also listen to the body.
Yeah.
You have to listen, and so to gain access to a quiet mind, if you're pushing yourself too hard, working too hard, not taking breaks, not having drinks, not eating properly, you know, all the stereotypical things we do as young people and students, cramming, because we know how it doesn't work.
Guilty of that one, definitely.
So it's just pulling back from that.
Yeah, I think it's important, definitely, to often, you know, like you said, take a step back, see the wider picture, because sometimes we can get pretty caught up in, oh, I have all these things to do, I have to do X, Y, and Z within a certain amount of time, especially in high school with all those deadlines, like chasing after you constantly. It's always difficult to try and quieten yourself and think, well, what's the best way to do this without, you know, burning out and overexerting myself. Can I ask if you'd have any opinion on, so obviously, as we discussed, a lot of teenagers and people in general know that, you know, we need to stay calm, stay rational in order to make good decisions. And we know that there are, you know, all these branches of well-being which we need to apply to ourselves in order to, you know, function properly, like you said, eating well, sleeping well, staying hydrated, etc. like that. Then we don't do it often, and generally people are a bit confused as to why, because we know that it is good for us, it's beneficial. So do you think that we just dislike change, or things that we're used to, in terms of if someone is used to constantly like working hard without taking any breaks, that it's just the fact that they're no longer going to be doing that that scares them, or is it something different?
Well, I think that what we're talking about there is also social conditioning. Remember how we spoke earlier that,
yes.
that you know, who's telling us that we need to do all these things? Our parents, the school system, so that our conditioning as young people is that we do keep pushing, we do keep working hard because we think we need to in order to achieve the things that we need to achieve. So I think that one antidote that I think always works, which is doing things you love doing. So if you can find the capacity to actually create the breaks, because like you say, most people know, common sense teaches you that you really should be doing those things, but if you're not doing them, then I think that if you can actually create a break of any kind, do something you really love doing, because that breaks the mold of that kind of thinking, you know, that driving force thinking that says, I've got to keep going, I've got to keep going, I've got to, because you've done it yourself, you know where that ends, you know where that...
It's not good.
That's right, the end result of that is burnout, as you said earlier. And nobody wants to burn out, so why do we keep going? I think, again, it's because we're pushing past the point, we're pushing through our social conditionings telling us we need to, we must, we should. So we've got to get, as you described a minute ago, we've got to look at the bigger picture. The bigger picture is, if we don't take those breaks, if we don't hydrate, if we don't eat well, if we don't sleep well, we're going to be less effective at those things that we want to achieve anyway. Having the breaks and doing those things is the very thing that leads to achieving greater results, you know, getting greater results.
And could I follow that up with just asking for your opinion on why what you described as beautiful neutrality is so important, you know, in life, just in general?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. Really good question. I think that it's important for people to know, especially young people, because they're looking to the adult world thinking the adult world's got all the solutions, and it's not true.
Not necessarily.
No. Sure, they might have the education, but so when I talk about a beautiful state of neutrality, I'm talking about the state that we're born in, okay? Our innate health, the natural intelligence of life that courses through us as a baby and as we grow. And I think that most people and most students that I've worked with over the years didn't know that they had that wisdom inside them. They didn't know they had natural intelligence.
I didn't know that.
Sure.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah. And I think that, should that be in the education system? Absolutely.
I think there are a lot of things that need to be in the education system that aren't there currently, and we went on for almost an hour about that.
Yes. Yeah.
Just to kind of sum up, if you could give maybe like your top 3 pieces of advice for people who are, you know, definitely trying to make more calm and clear decisions that can really just elevate their quality of living, you know, what would you say that those couple of things are? Because...
Okay, 3 things. I would say number 1, as I said a minute ago, find the things you really love to do and make sure you're doing those, because on top of having a lot to do in life, and as a teenager, as a student, you'll always have a lot to do if you're going to achieve.
Just how it is.
Yeah. So in the gaps between doing all that stuff, finding things you really love doing, because that creates neutrality of mind, because it brings you to the present moment, and that's where you really want to be.
Yeah.
And I think maybe secondly, I would say that if you're not feeling great and you're feeling really stretched and stressed, maybe you may be anxious, then that's the time to say, okay, this is the time I need to stop. This is the time I need to do something else. Whether that is going and doing something you want to do, if you can bring yourself to do that, or just take a break, just have a drink, just have something to eat, listen to your favourite song, get that good feeling going back through your body again, and then go back to what you have to do. But listen to the body.
Yeah.
Listen to the body. What else? Quiet mind. So finding that space in which the mind... Remember how I said that when we're overthinking things, and if we've got a lot to do, if we've got a busy mind, the only antidote to a busy mind You can't just get a quiet mind. You can't just say, oh, okay, now I want a quiet mind. Because it just, as you probably know, it just doesn't work.
Sadly.
But if you engage, like with a hobby or like with something you really love doing, if you engage with something you like, instantly your mind is taken to the present moment. So we're coming back to that, being in the present again. And as long as we are, as individuals, and this goes for everybody on the planet, as long as you and I are okay in the living moment, like this moment now as we're speaking, as long as we're okay in the moment, everything else is okay. Yeah. The third thing was to always, always, always remember that you have that wisdom and that you have that beautiful neutrality inside you. It's there from birth, it's there for our entire lives. And that's a really important thing to remember, because that's one of the things that sets us free from the mind being caught up in all that thinking. Remembering that there's something inside us that's so good and so magical that nothing in life can actually damage that. Circumstance can't damage that. Our bodies being hurt can't damage that. It's something that you can't actually ever damage. It can't be broken. It's the life force, if you like. But just so to remembering that we have that wisdom, that intuition, that common sense, that state of beautiful neutrality is always there below the surface of our thinking, whatever that thinking is. So that's why it really doesn't matter whether the thinking is positive or negative, because it's not really about positive and negative like we spoke earlier. It's about seeing that it's our state of mind that creates the feelings that we're having. You know, the state of mind that we're in that moment. So if we're okay in the moment, we'll be okay, you know, as time goes on. You know, the mind, we can always return to that beautiful space of neutrality.
Yeah. Thank you for this amazing opportunity. And if anyone would like to get in touch with Dean and learn more about this topic, please visit our website at TeenMeets.com and connect with us on our various social media platforms. Could you tell me a bit about the book that you wrote, The Great Remembering?
Sure.
Yeah.
So basically, here's a copy of the book. The Great Remembering really is, it sums up in very simple terms what we've just been discussing. So it looks at mind, thought and consciousness, and it explores many of the topics that we've spoken about today in very simple terms. And one of the good things about the book is it's only 50 pages long, and there's no chapters. You can open it up at literally any page and just start reading a section.
It's wonderful. And
yeah, it contains all of the kind of little gems that people need to remind them of who they really are. Remember how we spoke about this earlier, that in terms of that beautiful neutrality, that I call the book The Great Remembering because it's not something that we have to learn like through education. It's something that is so natural to us. That's why I call it the remembering, because we're remembering who we really are. And when we remember who we really are, then we're starting to break free into the best life ever. Because life can only get better when we're as authentically us as we can be. Life can only get better.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And what a great and important message that you've been able to communicate. So thank you for coming here to speak with me. And
my pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me. And I hope your Teen Meets goes really well.
Thank you. Thank you.